said is they said this is equivalent to not wanting to undress with someone based on their race in the 1960s, calling their female child a girl and their male child a boy.
Why are we allowing kids to believe that a he can become a she? Why are we pumping kids full of hormones? Right.
And what are they researching? Oh, what happens if we chop off body parts of young children? What happens if we take hormones?
It's mad science. Rewind 20, 30, 40 years ago. These guys would be taken away in straitjackets or to jail.
They have to do research because they're employed by these universities that are getting federal funding.
I didn't think that we needed any more gender study research. You know, the only research you needed was a swift kick to the nuts.
Go in and be Doge for the college.
All right, everybody. I'm your incorrigible host, Scott Loia. Thank you for joining the podcast again. This is our 9th episode, and we have somebody very, very special for you. Today's guest swam for University of Pennsylvania alongside a slick Willie, I want to say, in a women's bathing suit, 6'4" guy. What was his name? Leah Thomas. Now she's become a firebrand for women's rights and fairness in female sports. Please welcome Paula Scanlan.
Thank you for having me today.
I've been so excited actually to talk about this topic for a while, because when I started to get into politics, most of the stuff that I was talking about in the beginning was common sense. And this whole trans thing, it bothered me. And I'm so excited to hear about your story. You know, my daughter plays sports. I can't imagine. I have some friends where we have some trans kids on their girls' teams, but it hasn't happened with me. And I know as a parent, I'd be really pissed off about that. So tell us a bit about your experience and what it was like.
Yeah, so I was on the University of Pennsylvania women's swim team, and a member of the men's team, who formerly went by Will, woke up one day, basically decided he wanted to be on the women's team. And in that, he was given a locker room like everyone else. He broke every record in every event that he swam. He went on and won an NCAA championship, which I'm sure many people are already very familiar with. Our university, when we tried to talk about it and complain, they sent a panel of administrators to us, and they told us that if we ever spoke out against it, we would regret it. They said we would spend the rest of our lives tainted by this. That we would.
Who specifically?
The administration, the athletic department, and they brought in a bunch of other administrators from the university to talk to us as well.
So they're completely supportive of it.
Yes.
Do you feel like they were threatened at all, maybe by any sort of like outside groups or anything like that? Or do you feel like they kind of, you know, were supportive of it on their own and that they were pushing it?
I think they were supportive of it because I think following the rules is one thing, but they continue to highlight Thomas's accomplishments on social media. And they went on and nominated Leah Thomas for NCAA Woman of the Year. Right, each university gets a handful of nominees. They could have easily just not nominated him, and they chose to. And I think that shows they stood by what they did, and they really, truly believed in what they were trying to tell us.
It's got to be so frustrating. So for someone like you that comes in, you're in swimming for so long. You know, I read a little on your bio. You know, you started at an extremely young age. I'm sure you were really looking forward to competing greatly against other women and not expecting this. So how did it affect you? Like, how did you handle it when you first learned that this guy was gonna be on your team? How did you cope with that?
Yeah, so we first learned actually 2 years before it ended up actually happening, because we lost 2 seasons of competition because of COVID. So everyone got sent home in the middle of 2020. So I didn't finish that school year. And then the year after that, we had completely online classes, and there was no athletic competition whatsoever.
So already there's a setback.
Yeah. So we had lost over a year of school already. We hadn't been on campus for essentially 3 semesters. So after that, we go back, and that's the season that he's competing. So we knew that this was going to happen for a little while. When I first found out, I thought it was a joke. When he announced to us that he was going to be transitioning, he literally sat in front of the entire women's team and said, "Guys, I identify as a woman now. Please refer to me with she, her pronouns."
So you knew him from the men's team?
Yes, he was on the men's team, like a normal member of the men's team, competed on the men's team, was in the men's locker room, lived with people on the men's team. He was just like any other guy on the men's team.
He had guy friends?
Yeah. He lived with men. Like, he lived with the other men on the team.
And you speak with the other guys on the team that knew him? Like, wasn't a gag? Were they surprised?
No, it was, I mean, it was shocking for everyone. When he first came out of his mouth, I was choking back laughter because I thought we were on a prank show.
Sure.
I was thinking, I was like, there's got to be some candid cameras, or maybe there's some prank show that we're on, or I could not imagine why that would be the reality. And then after that happened, nobody else was laughing, or the cameras didn't come out and say, gotcha. Our coach just said, get in the pool, practice starts in 5 minutes. Everyone practiced like nothing had happened. So after this happened, I then went, okay, maybe this is real. And I went online to say, okay, what's the policy that allows this? And I did actually find the NCAA has something called the Transgender Inclusion Handbook, which at the time was almost 10 years old. And in it, it was just pages and pages of stories of men wearing women's athletic uniforms, like men in skirts, basically, with little quotes saying, I'm so happy now. And then at the very bottom, in one sentence, it literally said 1 year of testosterone suppressant. You can go and compete on
1 year what?
Of testosterone suppressant.
Right.
You can go and compete on any women's sports team in the NCAA, whether D1, D2, D3, any team.
Like that would do anything.
Yeah. And it was one line. It wasn't even like extensive research. It was literally just like testosterone suppressant and hormone therapy.
So what was the next step? What was your decision, or what was the maybe group decision between you and the other ladies on the team?
Well, so when we first found out, he did have to do a year of testosterone suppressant. So he was not able to immediately compete on the women's team. So in that time period, he was actually still on the men's team, but told us that we had to refer to him with she, her pronouns, but still calling him William because he hadn't announced his new name yet. So it was really, really interesting. And so he still competed actually on the men's team that season, and identified as a woman.
So as he's transitioning, which locker room is he using?
At this point in time, he's still in the men's locker room. Because he's on the men's team, and he now says that he's she, her.
And how's he being treated by his teammates on that side?
Everyone had to be very publicly supportive of it. No one said anything publicly about it at all. Everyone was very supportive. It was Nobody
said anything.
Publicly, not to the group, no, but privately.
Okay, so this is what I'm saying. Privately. Yeah. I'm not asking you to throw anybody under the bus, but like, I'm sure you guys had conversations with someone.
I would say like 85% of people you could have a one-on-one conversation with, and they're like, this is insane. Men's team, women's team, whatever. I think 15% of the people total either were dead silent or were, for whatever reason, supportive.
Was there like an imminent threat? Like maybe getting tossed off the team, or like tossed out of school, or maybe pressure from other teachers or other organizations within the university that would make it very discouraging for you to be there? Like what was it that they were threatening you with? Or was it just a threat that they were going to do something? You just didn't know what the something was.
So later on, when he's actually competing, it was a very different environment, because I'm talking about when we all first found out. It was just kind of like, what's going on?
Okay, well, right? I'm talking about that.
Yeah. So once he was actually competing, the administration came in and they told us point blank, you will regret speaking up about this. You will spend the rest of your life regretting it. You will never be able to find a job. And they told us, you will be painted in a bad light if you speak out against this. And what they said is, this is equivalent to not wanting to undress with someone based on their race in the 1960s. So they said those people in the 1960s that you think of, that they put in the textbooks, and they say that didn't want people with different races in the locker room. They painted that picture for us, and they said, you will be those people who are remembered in history as those.
The stupidity. I mean, look, you guys may be adults, but you're still young. You're not in a position of authority. That can be extremely intimidating. Did anybody at that point speak up, or you were still kind of pondering what to do? I'm talking about the students only. Yeah.
So at this point in time, I had actually already done an anonymous interview with the media. With the media.
Okay.
And it hadn't come out yet. So it ended up the way actually the timeline works. The first time they ever came in and had that full panel of people from the administration coming to talk to us, it was actually the next morning that my anonymous interview came out. And I made the mistake of telling a couple of girls on the team about that I had done that because I was saying someone has to fight against this.
They leaked it?
And they told everyone that it was me.
Oh
and
God.
I had multiple teammates text me and tell me I didn't deserve to be alive for my opinions. It was really, so nothing really I had done publicly at this point, but everyone knew where I stood, but everyone knew where a lot of other people stood on the team too. You could have one-on-one conversations throughout the entire season and people would say, I don't agree with this. This is really unfair. I'm really unhappy with this situation. And then you'd come to the group or we'd go to a meet and they would say, wow, we're so proud of you, Leah. You're so beautiful and authentic and we're so proud of you being yourself. So there was disconnect between these one-on-one conversations and then coming to the group and people saying what they actually believed.
What was your position on the team? Were you a starter?
So swimming doesn't really.
Well, I'm asking like that, because I'm like, maybe what's the motivation for throwing you under the bus?
I wasn't very good. I was
Okay.
I was not a top person on our team at all.
Okay, it was D1.
Yeah.
All right. But, I mean, in order to make a D1 team,
but the entire conversation is not about my athletic ability or lack.
No, that I understand, but I was trying to make a connection, like maybe what their motivation would have been to throw you under the bus, because they didn't have to say that at all. They could have just been quiet, but for some reason they actually chose to be vocal about it and throw you under the bus. So that makes me curious. Was there some sort of ulterior motive?
So I think part of it was the social currency of being on the side of Leah Thomas. So I think in everyone's heart, and again, this is, I would say 85% of the girls on that team completely agreed with my stance. Wholeheartedly agreed with me. But they couldn't say that out loud. And if they said that out loud, the 15% that didn't agree, they were afraid that they wouldn't like them or that someone else would get mad or their friends would get mad or their professors would get mad, whoever. And I think part of that is if you can't be on that side completely because they don't believe that, what's the next best way to get in with that group of people?
Right.
It's to say, oh my gosh, I can't believe this girl is so awful for saying all of these things. Look what she's done. So you're hiding behind that to then, cover up what your own belief on the situation might be.
It really is disgusting. No backbone. So, oh my God, I feel bad because as a parent, and I have 2 girls myself. I can only imagine. And I think about what I would do in this situation all the time because, I hear these stories. So my next question for you would be like, what about the parents? They hear this, what was the advice from your parents, maybe how to handle it, or did they want to get involved at all?
Yeah. So interestingly, there was actually a whole group of parents that were all together in a group chat talking about how messed up the situation was. And my parents weren't that involved. And to be honest, at that point in time, my parents weren't even that involved in swimming. They were like, you're a senior. You've already had 2 years off. Like, we went to your swim meets for years and years. Like, I don't even care anymore. That's what I think they came to maybe one meet senior year. Okay. And my mom took more photos of Leah Thomas than she took of me. Like, it was, like they were done. And my brother and I are 8 years apart. My brother was already like well into his adult life at this point. It was like, why do we even have a kid in college anymore? But so that was my parents. They of course were, against it, and they would talk about how it was ridiculous, but they weren't really that active. But there was a very active group of parents that were talking to the media about the situation, that were signing letters saying that the girls in the team don't support this, that were even leaking things to the media as well. But a lot of the kids who had the same stance as their parents would still hide behind it and pretend like they didn't, or pretend like they were on the side of
it amazes me
Leah.
that they would do that if they have parents who are willing to be vocal and speak up. I don't make those sorts of connections. It's very backwards to me.
Yeah, and I think so. One moment, and we were in a team meeting, and I was like, guys, like, this is messed up. I said that to the group. And one of the girls was like, I can't believe you would say that out loud. We need to just stand together. Like, this is our situation. We have to band together as a team. And I remember that girl who said that in front of the entire team. I had a class with her, and we would talk privately about it every day during class about how much she hated it, how she disagreed with the situation, and how she was unhappy with the situation. She would say that to me all the time. And then she said that in front of the group, and I was like, okay, way to throw me under the bus in front of the entire team. And then a couple days later, my parents there was a meet, and after the meet, all the parents were, they go have dinner or whatever. They saw her mom meeting with the Daily Mail reporter, leaking him all the information about what was going on the team on the same side that I was on. Mm-hmm. So I was like, that's so bizarre. Your mom is literally leaking things to Daily Mail about what's going on this team. And you, to the group, are saying, how dare you guys talk to the media, or how dare you have an objecting opinion, even though she didn't believe that. So I think that to me was probably the worst part. I say this a lot to people, and people honestly get mad at me, but I'm going to say it again. I have more respect for the 15% of people on my team who genuinely, truly believed that Leah Thomas was a woman than the people who knew it was wrong and pretended like they had a different opinion. I'm serious. And I've said that to them publicly. I have more respect in the girls.
I agree with you.
I have more respect for the teammate that told me I didn't deserve to be alive than I do for that girl.
I agree with you. Even though, yes, we don't agree with that sort of stance.
I
agree with you because it's more of a backbone. There's more credibility to that person's integrity. Yep. I wasn't actually anticipating this kind of response from you. It seems very strange to me in a scenario like that they would keep up appearances just for social currency while they're in the school, and then behind the curtain they would go and talk to the media and do that kind of stuff. That
but it was more
so
like their parents
strange.
Being disconnected from the kid. I don't, it was mostly
parents. The parents would do that, but then the kids wouldn't know, or the kids
knew.
wouldn't even.
They knew.
Right, they had to know, so they wouldn't discourage their parents from doing that if they wanted that social currency and decided to take that direction. It's very strange. I wasn't expecting to hear that. No, it's so funny.
But we've seen this all happen like during COVID, right? Okay, look at like Gavin Newsom out in California, right? He's preaching the masking, the distancing, and whatever, and then you see him out to dinner at that French whatever. That's what I'm saying.
A little different.
I don't think that it quite is. I think it's people who are trying to, because it's the social, cool, liberal thing to think and say, they're going to do that, but behind closed doors, they have completely different values and they don't believe what they're saying. And I think I believe it's one and the same. I think that that's what we're seeing, and that's exactly why we're in the situation we are with a lot of these political issues, is because majority of Americans don't agree with these things, but they're like, oh, but I want to feel like a good person, so I'm going to pretend to be liberal.
So then what happens when Slick Willie is in the locker room with you guys? Is his junk hanging out?
Yeah, he just undressed them. I mean, I didn't really look, to be honest. I was not in a position of trying to look at him at all. I would literally stick my head in my own locker, cover myself with a towel, and change as quickly as possible.
He's there to either look at you.
Yeah, he was, and he was in there again. We were changing. We had 9 practices a week. You change in your swimsuit, you change out. So it's 18 times per week. You're like fully exposed in front of this man. It was just incredibly unpleasant. I hated every single minute of that. I would never want
There was no
again.
option maybe to go to another bathroom, or like a gender neutral or a family bathroom or something like that, single stall.
There was a single family stall bathroom
in
the hallway. And a lot of people would, not a lot of people actually, only one girl really would go out, and she changed actually every single practice in that bathroom. Mm-hmm. I was on the opposite side of the locker room, so I wasn't as exposed to him, if that makes sense. But yes, again, I would just change as quickly as I could and get out of there.
Right. And is he taking his time?
Honestly, it was honestly very traumatic. I think I honestly blacked out a lot of it, really, truly. Like, I don't think I even really processed how bad it was until I was out of the situation. I just knew I felt really uneasy being in there, and I would try to get out as quickly as possible.
Did you have any interaction with him, or you just completely avoided him?
Not in the locker room.
Not in the locker room.
No, yeah.
At all.
Passively. I tried to avoid being near him. Like, if I would see which lane he would go in, I would try to be far away, because I didn't want to be anywhere near the situation, whether it was competing or
even
passing.
Outside of the pool, just avoid it. And what about the other teammates?
There were people who would try to go out of their way to be really friendly to him, for social currency reasons. I think probably most people acted that way. I think people were nicer to him than they were to me.
I'm sure.
On the team.
I'm sure.
So if that's
and
like
I think that's
consolation.
it really is disgusting.
Well, there was one point where they went to a bunch of my teammates went to my coach and they said, I don't want to room with Paula. But what was so ironic is they said that they didn't want to room with him either.
Right.
But they wouldn't tell that one publicly. But
Right.
they would secretly go to the coach and I'm not rooming with him. I also can't room with that transphobe, Paula. But it was like, okay, well, if gun to your head, I'm sure he'd rather room with me.
Where are you originally from?
I'm from Connecticut.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you expect that going to Pennsylvania? Because Connecticut's pretty liberal.
I expected college to be liberal, and it was. I mean, the minute I stepped on campus, it was like the most liberal place ever. But I don't think I ever imagined there would be a man on my team in my locker room. It's a very different situation.
Nobody does. So talk to us a little bit about the current administration, Trump administration. I guess they declared, that UPenn violated Title IX, right?
Yes.
And you had a visit to the White House. You want to tell us a little bit about that? That sounds like it was quite exciting.
Yeah. So two different things.
Sure.
The recent ruling has just happened this past week. So yeah, that was, expected. So we're waiting to see Penn's response. They still haven't said anything or taken any action yet. And allegedly they're supposed to write apologies to the female athletes that were impacted by this. So
You think they will?
I personally don't think that they will, but some people seem to be hopeful that they might. I'll keep you
Did they
guys
pull the
posted.
funding yet, or they're just under the threat of funding being pulled?
They had pulled funding back in March, but not
Okay.
all of the federal funding, only a
How much was it? It was like $1 billion or something like that, right?
They pulled it. I think it was six. You can look it
I
up,
don't
but I think it
remember.
was maybe $60 million or $55 million. I think maybe was the number, something like that, 55 or $60 million. But again, the overall endowment is over $20 billion. So that's really a small fraction in the total endowment of this university. But I think that they're cracking down. The administration's cracking down on this issue, which is great. But I think there still needs to be a lot of work done to fix not just my university, but all of the universities.
All of them, yeah, of course.
Just Harvard was in the news today about they did research to investigate anti-Semitism on Harvard's campus, and
Don't get me started
it's
on that.
and so that school is also run down to the core. I mean, I think all of the Ivy Leagues to their core are incredibly corrupt, and I think losing federal funding is not going to fix the core and the root of these problems.
I think it's going to help.
I think it's a good start. But
I think it's going to
don't-
light a fire under their ass and, give them a little bit of a reality check. What are they going to do without the money? They're going to lose a lot of opportunity.
Such a small portion of their total endowment, though.
You're not wrong, but it is something. And then also what's happening is you have to understand, when they lose credibility and when they lose integrity, then that piece of paper that you get when you graduate from that school, it's not as valuable anymore. So there are a lot of people pondering, well, should I go to this school? Should I go to Columbia? Should I go to Harvard? Not just because maybe I feel unsafe there, okay, but why have to deal with all that bullshit? Okay, if I go now and 5 or 10 years from now, that piece of paper, that document isn't as valuable because they don't have the same stature that they used to have.
I think it's
already.
I think the piece of paper is already pretty invaluable.
I don't disagree with you.
To be
I'm actually
honest.
not a big fan of college anyway. I think unless you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, I have this argument with my family and friends all the time. Unless you really need the degree.
Yeah, I think if you're a doctor.
Yeah, I think college is way overrated. Charlie Kirk does a lot of stuff on that, like the college scam. I completely agree with him about the college scam.
But I think also what you need to look at, I one time looked at the University of Pennsylvania where I went. There's 255 unique majors or something like that. It's well into the 200s, I think. And a majority of them are things I've never even heard of before. I mean, there's 7 different majors within the gender studies department.
Majors within?
Yes,
Not just a class, but a major on gender studies?
You can major in lesbians, and you can major in gay people. You can major in women's studies only. And then LGBT, and then trans. There's unique majors within that umbrella that they have.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. So most of the majors are maybe I think you could. I honestly think every college could be cut down to 15 majors. I don't think you need to be having a million different things you can major in. There's no point.
Yeah, but college is a business. They have to do that.
Yeah.
They have to broaden everybody's horizons who's going to go there. So, but no, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just, taking a jab at them. But let's rewind. Let's go back to Trump. So you went to the White House and he was signing the executive order.
Yeah, I was there that day. Yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about that? That sounds exciting.
I mean, it was definitely super exciting. I think more for me, it was just interesting that we even had to waste time doing that. I mean, it just felt silly.
Why?
Because it's such a nonsense issue. There's like, we shouldn't need to sign an executive order.
You're right. Right.
Like that's, to me, honestly, I was sitting there and I was like, wow, this is so cool. But I was also just like, the fact that we are here shows how insane everyone has gotten. We have to waste the president of the United States time to sit there and sign an executive order to literally say men don't belong in women's sports. He's the most important person in the entire world. And we have to waste his time and sit there and have him sign a piece of paper that says that. Do you know what I mean? And that to me was my primary thought. I mean, of course, and don't get me wrong, it was really wonderful experience to be there, and I was so grateful, and so many young girls.
I get your take though. You're coming with these answers that are they're not off the wall. They're very, they're rooted in sanity. I'm just not expecting them. I always pictured the different answers, but you're not wrong at all. It's totally true. And the culture shift that the country went through, or the world, because the world's followed us, with this woke garbage. It's unbelievable how we got there. When I started to first get into politics, the transgenderism, that was one of the first things that really lit the fire under my ass. And I was just so pissed off about it. I was like, what is going on here? Why are we allowing, kids to believe that a he can become a she or vice versa? Why are we pumping kids full of hormones? This is dangerous. Yeah, it's mad science. Why are we allowing mad scientists? We have a whole medical industry dedicated to this stuff. And if you would rewind 20, 30, 40 years ago, these guys would be taken away in straitjackets or to jail for doing what they're doing now. But now we pump $2 billion into it annually, or however much.
Probably more, to be honest.
It's become an industry. And I'm just so glad. I feel, I don't know about you, but I feel like we have gotten our hooks back in to the culture. We got a firm grip and the needle has moved, and I feel like the culture now, we've sort of taken it back, and the momentum is with us, and common sense is coming back. Do you agree?
I do.
We have to keep our foot on the gas.
We do. I think that the biggest thing that I'm now seeing, though, is, so Trump's done this, signed the executive order. Unfortunately, it failed to pass through the Senate. So they passed the House. 2 Democrats voted in favor of keeping men out of women's sports. 2. And I remember being happy about that. And then I realized there was 208 others that did not vote that way, which is insane. Some representatives here from New Jersey on the opposing side of that vote. But, whatever, they go on. Not a single Democrat in the Senate votes for it, as expected, which is so sad. So we're in a situation now where it's not federal law and it's just an executive order. And then now we're seeing liberal states. I have friends, I'm from Connecticut, so I see this all the time. I have friends that live out in Colorado, California, Washington State, Oregon, that are, those states are saying, come here and have all the men play the women's sports. And they're willing to fight the Trump administration on it. And they're willing to, take it up and continue to allow it to happen, or hide it, or push it under the rug, or pretend like it's not going on. So what I like to see, or what I like to say about it, is it's sort of, we're seeing like the sanctuary state issue that was happening, but with transgenderism in sports and transitioning kids and taking custody away from parents if their kid says that they're a boy or a girl and they're not.
That's scary.
Yeah, so that it's still a problem. Now, we're seeing this divide between red and blue states really on this issue. And so that is something I don't enjoy seeing, particularly on this issue.
I think a lot of that is politics, because they have to cater to their, fringe, crazy base.
Sure, but 67% of Democrats don't even agree with this.
We're not disagreeing. Yeah. I'm just trying.
No, and I agree, but I'm saying it's like they're not even following their own majority of their voter base, right. Which is wild.
Yeah, it really is sad. it's very sad. You're not wrong. What else did I want to talk to you about? Oh yeah. So not just visiting the White House, but recently you also visited Long Island University.
Oh yeah.
A little bit of the opposite experience, right? I saw some of the stuff there.
Yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah.
That
So I
was
mean,
kinda
we
crazy.
do college campus speeches.
Uh-huh.
A lot of different organizations do, and just bringing conservative voices to college campuses. Obviously not unique to me. I'm sure people online probably see all
Right.
of the different people that go out and do these. We met with protesters. I remember last year I was out in California, and the Association of Coffee Shop and Bookstore Owners and Antifa came together and protested me being there. They made a bunch of flyers with my face and whatever. And this is like, everyone in California doesn't have a job came to protest me being there. I had to get a police escort to go to the bathroom. So this is not unusual, but just recently, last week I was in Long Island at Long Island University, and people did not want our message to be on the college campus.
Right.
So they, defaced my name on some posters. They ripped them up. A college campus actually back in March ripped up my posters and put it in a toilet and peed on it, and someone took a photo. But that's just what you see on college campuses. But that's more reason why we should be there, and not just me, but
Absolutely.
other people's voices that are, different opinions.
What about the support? I'm sure you had support. There are people who came to listen to you there, right? Do you feel like they outnumbered these protesters?
Oh yeah, they do.
Fringe?
And there's a lot of
Sure.
and there's mostly support. And every time I go to a college campus, obviously there's people who leave nasty messages, but there's so many that leave very heartfelt, meaningful messages that are telling me how much it means to them to have someone that represents their viewpoints speaking on their campus. So hope is not lost on the college campuses. It's just it's definitely interesting.
Well, I'm glad that you at least experienced the fuel to keep going now that you've fallen into this path. Sometimes, we don't know exactly where we're going to wind up. You didn't know that this was going to happen to you, that there was going to be this fork in the road that you'd have to take. But you've taken this path, and you've taken it very far and, very fast. And I think that it's great what you're doing. I also saw some of the pictures that you're talking about where they were vandalizing and they were writing or trying to write.
Fascist.
You would think that college students would know how to spell, but they don't know how to spell fascist.
That's really
I
funny.
thought that was crazy. Doesn't say a lot for Long Island University. Was that where you were? Okay. Where do you think, though? Like, I want to get your. I'm sorry. I want to get your take on the root of the problem when it comes to transgenderism, because I have my own perspective, and a lot of people, don't like how curt I am. Okay, but before I say what I have to say, okay, what do you think spawns this? Like, how does somebody wind up becoming trans? Okay, so you have an experience with Will. I'll dead name him, whatever his name is, Thomas. Okay, you have your experience with this guy. Do you know, like, if this was like a genuine thing, if it was a publicity stunt, like, what do you think it was? How does somebody become transgender in your mind?
He actually admitted this in an interview. This is, I think, if he did it with Sports Illustrated, you can go look it up. But he literally wrote, "I was depressed and I Googled my symptoms and the internet told me I was transgender." That was how Leah Thomas came to be transgender. Same thing.
Do you buy it? You think that that's a genuine narrative that he's putting out there?
If you're familiar with Chloe Cole, so you should look her up. She's a detransitioner. So she was someone who had transitioned as a child.
Okay.
And there's many more like Chloe. Chloe's obviously just the most notable one.
I do know her.
Prisha, there's a girl named Maya. I mean, I've gotten to know all of these young girls who, many of them are even younger than I am. And they were transitioned as children. And obviously they shared their story into how they figured out that they actually weren't a boy and all of the different things. And every single one of them said that there was something that was going on where they felt either depressed or lonely or something had happened that was traumatic. And they went online and they looked for answers or for help. And they find these online communities of people being so supportive that are telling them that they're transgender, and they feel like they're finally part of a community. And that love makes them feel like they need to be this opposite thing from what they are, and that you actually will be happy if you cut your breasts off, and you chop off body, all the things that are just horrific. And so that is how the majority of them became trans. But in terms of where the transgenderism stuff comes from, it's two places. Big Pharma has a ton to profit from these people. So of course they have vested interest in pushing this on everyone. If you are transgender, you can lead to a big pharma company profiting at least $200,000 with surgery and being on hormones for the rest of your life. That is a huge profit per person. And honestly, I feel bad for them because they're victims of big pharma. Truly.
Yeah, we were talking about that before. They
are
built an industry around this.
They built an industry around this.
But you did say something that caught my attention. So they're seeking out, community. I guess, advice online, maybe where they could go, or what is wrong with them, how they can cure their depression. And I guess people are diagnosing them in these chat groups, like you said.
Yeah, and if you Google depression, like you literally go on the internet and just like Google, am I depressed or something? It won't take you that long to find a quiz that somehow goes into either telling you that you're probably gay or telling you that you're trans. I mean, they're so readily available, and young people have extended access to the internet. And then also during COVID, we saw everyone, and this is when transgenderism really exploded, right? Everyone is locked at home. You're feeling depressed because you don't have any social interactions. You feel like you don't have community because every single community is closed. I can't even go to church because they closed the building down, right? And okay, everyone's depressed. So what do? You go on the internet because that's the only thing that you have. And these chat groups really blew up. And that's what a lot of people really credit this huge boom to how transgenderism really came from this smaller niche thing to like really so heard of. I mean, I think there's not a day goes by where I don't hear from somebody telling me that, a kid in their school is transitioning or a kid is taking their opportunity away.
Well, it does sound almost like the fad because they're gravitating to it because it seems like they find acceptance there from the way that you're describing it. Mm-hmm. So that takes them out of the depression, and I guess they feed on that. That's interesting. I didn't think of that. I had a little bit of a different take. But
one more thing I will add.
Go ahead.
Quickly, and I want to hear your take because I'm curious about it. But is also college campuses are 100% to blame for this as well.
You think so?
Research. A lot of the transgenderism research has come from these gender studies programs because these people are being paid 6-figure salaries to go be a professor in gender studies or whatever. Right. They have to do research because they're employed by these universities that are getting federal funding. And they say, well, we have to put the federal funding towards research.
Right.
And what are they researching? Oh, what happens if we chop off body parts of young children? What happens if we take hormones? Things like that. Go look at some of the research that have come out of gender study departments on some of these college campuses. It's disgusting. And they're pushing that. And then they're also teaching more students to then go into the world and teach more people about this nonsense. And that's exactly why I think we need to cut the fat in these universities. No school in this country needs a gender studies department. And I go back to my first statement. I think we don't need more than like 12 to 15 majors at any college.
I didn't think that we needed any more gender study research. The only research you needed was a swift kick to the nuts to, decide whether you were a boy or a girl. I mean, that's the way I always figured it.
You can go in and be Doge for the college campuses.
Anyway, it's interesting. It's not the first time that I've heard what you just described, but you did describe it in a little more depth where I'm starting to understand that that's, I guess I would concede. Yeah, the way you're talking about it, it does sound like it is a huge factor, especially for the older group. Okay, so if you're in your teens already and you're suffering depression,
and it's also not just depression; it's also kids with autism.
Correct.
Correct. That's a big bit.
But that's going to push you over the fence. This kind of thing. But as you're older.
When they've done studies on children who do transition, right? That is, they fall into these categories, or they've had a traumatic childhood experience.
Right. So I'm going to take what you're saying, and I guess it's more ammo for me, more information for me. No, seriously, because that would, I guess, accelerate. Look, when you're younger, you're formidable. When you're older, like you're a teenager, you're less formidable. When you're an adult, you're even less, formidable. But because you've gone through experiences, you know more from right and wrong. Like you've learned the rules, the laws of the universe The older you are, the wiser you are. So it's harder to permeate falsehoods. Okay.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
right. So what you're saying is actually new information for me, or better information for me, how it can, I guess, accelerate a kid at that age level. But I believe that there's like a seed. It starts at a seed stage in a child's life. I think most of this stuff stems from bad parenting. Mm-hmm. Okay. Like really bad parenting.
There's the one saying I'll leave you with that I see on Twitter all the time. There's no such thing as a trans child. No. Only a narcissistic parent.
Yeah. No. I say that all the time. The exact quote. I say shit parent. But yeah. That for me, that's how it starts. And these people, they use their kids as like virtue signaling trophies. Look how accepting I am. Look at me. You know, like I'm the best liberal out of the liberals. Like I have I have two. I have 3 trans kids. Like how the fuck does that happen? You have 3 trans kids. Well, man, go buy me a lottery ticket. You know, it's so weird. So like I feel like it's an evil kind of thing. You know, somebody like that doesn't deserve to be a parent, because in my mind, it's child abuse. I'm on the school board. Okay. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I railed heavily against, and Catherine, you met Catherine also.
Yeah.
Catherine D'Agostino? You know Catherine.
Yeah.
So she's on the school board with me. We ran on a slate together. So we really railed hard against this stuff.
As you should.
5'7", 5'6", you know, where a lot of people didn't want to touch it because of the symbolism. The word transgender is in the title of the policy, and because I wanted to abolish it, because you can't, you know, reverse the intent of the policy, otherwise you'll get sued by the state. So I said, well, it's not mandated, let's just remove it.
Yeah.
And by removing it, then we solve everything. Let them go to the state and bitch about it if they got a problem. But we don't have to endorse it by putting it in our books, you know, just abolish it, right? But all these people, not in our district, but the high school, they kind of followed our lead. And when they abolished it, there was so many of those clowns.
I love to hear
and the alphabet people, they came and they're like, no, you know, but, you know, when you have good parents and then you have an institution like the education system trying to keep parents uninformed about their kids, or at least enabling them. You know, I don't want to point fingers.
There's states
it's horrible.
Take away custody from your parents if they.
I would imagine California as well.
Yes.
Let's not get into that. I know that they did it in Canada. I didn't think that
they did
was
it
at this
done
stage
in Canada.
yet.
No, it's in California, and there's other parents that have been reported to Child Protective Services for misgendering their child. As in calling their female child a girl and their male child a boy, and they get reported to CPS.
And then what happens?
Oftentimes it's divorced parents. I think that's the biggest one that they're seeing. So one parent doesn't want to, you know, call the kid something else. The parent that does gets to keep full custody of the kid, and the other parent is literally not allowed to see their child anymore. And that's a big common one. I think that's been like probably the majority of the stories you see, right? Because it involves 2 parents that are not together. And I think that's really where a lot of those start. And it's in liberal states always. I mean, it's California does this. You know, there's stories in New Mexico, similar thing.
Well, we have to keep fighting. Want to make 2 announcements for the podcast, guys. I hope you're enjoying this content. We're getting a lot of great information and great content here from Paula. This has been wild, listening to the stories that you have to tell and all that stuff. It's crazy. But so many of you, I meet you guys at the bagel store, in the coffee shop. You like the content. You tell me, Scott, keep going. This is awesome. But you don't smash the like button. Smash the like button. Please share the content. That's how we grow. And don't forget, scottloia.com. Okay. This is the theme of the show. We're going to leave the woke behind. Please buy a t-shirt. Okay. Wear it proud. And for Paula today, I wore this one.
I know. I was going to comment on the shirt.
Okay. because I do prefer my Hershey's without nuts. All right. Buy them at scottloyd.com. They're not very expensive. Okay. Help me out, guys. Come on. But now that I mentioned that, I want to get back to you, and I want to talk about the last thing. Okay. Because now you've become politically active. Okay.
I've been politically active.
Yeah. No. Okay. So that was going to be a question. When did you become politically active? So it wasn't just because of what happened with you?
No. I was in college Republicans before any of this happened.
All right.
A lot of people blame me. A lot of people say we don't want you on our side because they think that I'm one of the people who voted for Biden and then watches. I did not vote for Biden. I voted for Trump in 2020. It wasn't legal to vote in 2016 yet because I was under 18.
So how'd you get into it?
I got political actually because I got kicked out of my class in high school after Trump got elected. I was not political. Yeah, this is how I started. So thank you to my teacher. I'm not going to say her name. I was in AP US history. I was not political. My parents weren't very political. They told me they didn't really know which candidate to vote for. Both my parents, I think, voted for neither candidate in 2016. So I wasn't being, brought one way or the other politically. And I watched what happened in my high school after Trump was elected, high school in Connecticut. Trump gets elected and the teachers refuse to teach the classes. They're crying in the hallway. They have Hillary's concession speech on every TV, every smartboard, every single electronic screen in the school is playing Hillary's concession speech. The teachers are wearing black. They're crying. They refuse to teach. I knew nothing about politics, but what I did know is I was taking AP US history that year. So I go to my AP US history class and my teacher sits in front of the room and she's in tears and she goes, guys, let's just talk about what happened. And so we all get to go around the room and like chat about, their people's feelings. And I'm not really listening even to really what anyone has to say. So it gets to me and I go, I understand people are upset their candidate didn't win. But the entire premise of this country is the concept of checks and balances. And he will not be a dictator. And we should be able to rely on the other branches of government and the other elected individuals we put into office.
Wow.
That's what we've learned this entire year.
What a great answer.
But
what a great answer.
So it would have been and it would have been a better answer because that sounds like kind of something a troll would say if you were like a Republican person trying to troll at the teacher.
I don't think so. I think that's actually a very based answer.
So
it wasn't even like a dagger. It seemed pretty based.
Well, she looked at me with anger as I'm saying this, and she said, true. That is incredibly disingenuous to bring up at this current time. And I think it would be best if you left.
Holy shit.
Kicked out of class.
Never to come back or just for the day?
For the day.
All right.
My dad had to email her and try to apologize because she demanded evidence that we weren't like a Trump supporting family or something. My dad was like, I don't even know anything. And
even if you were, she kicked.
We were, and then there was another girl in my high school who was kicked out of her homeroom because her homeroom teacher was saying, this is the same day, homeroom teacher was saying all Trump supporters are evil fascists, and she goes, again, we were 16. My parents voted for Trump. Kicked out of her homeroom. So this was like sort of happening around the school that the teachers were freaking out about students who were potentially conservative. So anyway. Long story short, I knew nothing really about politics at all at this point in time. That happened to me. I immediately started doing research because I was like, okay, why do they feel this way? And I watched super left-leaning videos. Like I watched the Young Turks. I found PragerU. I really spent the year in my free time after school just being like, okay, why do these people feel this way? Why do they think these things? I watched all the videos and I really did watch content from both sides.
Sure.
I didn't just get like, and by the end of that year, so by 2017, and by the time I was a senior in high school, I was like, okay, I am definitely a Republican. I joined college Republicans my first week on campus. We had Candace Owens. I know she's a little controversial now, but back then she came to speak on my campus freshman year, and I went. I didn't tell a lot of people that I went, but I did. So I was pretty politically active, and of course, the second that this happened to me, it became the topic of pretty much all of our meetings in our college Republicans group. It was like, we would just chat about what was going on. And I remember telling all my friends in the club that this was happening and we were going to see this huge news story. And a lot of people told me I was making it up. But of course, it turned into the biggest news story.
That's wild. But you know what? Very fortunate for you that you've come to this realization and you know who you are and you know what your values are at such a young age. For me, I really wasn't thinking about any of this stuff. I guess, like instinctively,
Yeah.
You know, you could sort of say I was kind of like Trump in a sense. Like I didn't really come into it with any ideology, you know, it was always, you know, rooted in common sense, you know, so it was very easy for me once I kind of got into it. I didn't realize until I was like maybe in my 30s what was going on, because I voted for Obama.
I mean, a lot of people probably.
I voted for Obama in 2008. And after a few months of his bullshit, okay, well, I had to really start paying attention. I'm like, what the hell did I just do? Because I see what's going on in the news. And then I learned about the bias, and you turn on two different news stations telling the same story. You listen to one side and then the other side. You're like, what the hell is going on here? Then I knew that I had got played and I had the wool pulled over my eyes. But you didn't. And good for you. That's amazing. Just because you mentioned her name, I'm just curious, because we're coming on the tail end of this. What do you think of Candace now? Because I'm like you. I used to love her.
I haven't really been following. I just honestly I don't consume a lot of content really anymore, because there's just so many different.
Sure.
I do consume content, just not consistently to one person.
Right,
That's what I was trying to say. But I just saw something about her saying she regretted voting for Trump recently. I know there's been a lot of just controversies in terms of Israel. And I also feel like her content has started to just shift more towards pop culture versus politics. And so I just know I honestly haven't really, I kind of need to probably do a deeper dive into what's been going on there. But I just know that when you mention her name now, people are usually just like, eh.
She used to be so good. I used to love her. I used to share her content with a lot of my friends and stuff like that. And I don't know what happened. I don't.
Yeah,
it's very strange, you know. Like, and I even sided with her when she was on the Daily Wire, and there was that split. You know, like you can have different views, even if it's on Israel. Yeah. Like I'm Jewish. You know, I don't care if I have Jewish friends that are critical of Israel. That's fine, and that's going to be for another podcast. We'll get someone to talk about that. But she's really gone off the rails, in my opinion.
Yeah, I haven't seen
and I feel like
it's
sad, and I don't understand.
Yeah,
I'm like, maybe it's like
saying,
a fight within to stay relevant. I'm not sure, you know, because she had a great brand, and I feel like she's in quicksand right now. Before we end, last topic. Let's talk about your, going from your experience with young Republicans and being politically involved. Now you're working with Scott Pressler.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so you're even more active. You're going out there. You're getting the votes. You want to talk about that a little?
Absolutely.
And plug earlyvoteaction.com.
Yes.
We got to plug
earlyvoteaction.com. So obviously we are in New Jersey today. But we are working to get New Jersey better leadership and get you guys a Republican governor. And that's the goal for this November. And so it's been a really awesome experience. And I think this is another cool story how I even got involved. I am from the Northeast, and I felt I live in New York now. I grew up in Connecticut. I actually had lived in New York as well as a kid, and I went to college in Pennsylvania. This is the only area I've really spent any of my time in. And I always felt like the Northeast was lost and it was so blue. And then I saw the results from this past election with New Jersey. And New Jersey was so close at one point in the night. It was closer than Arizona. I think the final count ended up not being
right.
Arizona was closer than New Jersey, but not by much. And I saw this. It was a crazy shift. And I would start tweeting things like, New Jersey's a swing state, all of this. Things started blowing up. I had no idea that Scott had any intentions of coming into New Jersey. But apparently they saw the same things I saw. And I had a message in my DMs on Twitter from the Early Vote Action Twitter account. Sorry, and I had no idea who was talking to me or who was even running that. And they were like, hey, we're working on New Jersey. Like, do you want to be like more involved? And I said, absolutely, I do. And the rest was history. I was the first hire in the state of New Jersey for Early Vote Action. We now have about 15 people hired full-time, registering voters, going to events, doing outreach, turning people from Democrats to Republicans. I think that's really the biggest one that we have. Yes.
Awesome.
We're flipping people from Democrats to Republicans. It's -1 for them, +1 for us.
That's great.
That's a net 2 gain. Those are the best. And we're just a presence here. And I think the people of New Jersey are fed up with the cost of living. They're fed up with the transgenderism and the woke in the schools. They're fed up with the overspending the Democrats have done to them. I mean, you live in New Jersey. I'm sure you can probably talk.
I live in New Jersey.
My
My kids are going to school in Jersey, and that's why I joined the board. Like, this stuff is crazy. So believe me, I appreciate what you're doing. I know some people appreciate what I'm doing. We got to keep the fight going. And just to throw another stat out there, we've been repeating this stat. I repeated it with Michael Casey. I repeated it with Jay Costa. Okay. Republicans, we don't have the majority of registrations yet. Okay, but our registrations are up like 20,000?
Well, we're
and Dems were down too.
We're outnumbering them every month when the voter registration data comes out. I mean, today's end of month, so in a couple of days we'll get to see what we did in April. But we're outnumbering them. And again, people are tired. People are tired of the liberals in New Jersey ruining the state. People are tired of their friends moving away because they can't afford things. And we're here to help everyone in New Jersey, truly. Even the Democrats, they don't know it yet. Their lives will be better under a Republican governor. And we're here really to help everyone in this state by doing this and doing this work. And so we appreciate you for all you do here in New Jersey, of course. And we're grateful. And if any of your New Jersey friends want to come volunteer with us, we love volunteers. We're going to hit the shore. I want to come
volunteer. When you guys go down to the shore, wherever it is, whether it's Manalapan,
we'll be there all summer. We'll be there all summer.
I honestly want to take 1 or 2 weekends. I want to do some man on the street. I was in Teaneck a couple of weeks ago. That was actually the second to last one that I did before I did it with Jay. We went to Teaneck. We went to one of those Tesla takedown rallies. And man, they're on their last 2 brain cells. And those 2 brain cells are in a race for 3rd place. I mean, it's really bad. There was one guy there. He had a good head on his shoulders. I could have a good conversation with him. He didn't seem like he really belonged in that crowd. But it's almost like you feel like they were paid. I didn't hang around to see if they went on a bus or anything like that. But, they didn't know how to verbalize. They didn't know how to defend their position. Go check it out. You'll see how bad it is.
Yeah, we've seen some of these protests.
It's crazy. But I'd like to go to the beach because there are a lot of undecided there. There are a lot of young people. And, you could go out there, you could talk to them, and you could, just set the honeypot, come to us. This is what's happening in Jersey, I love what you guys were doing, with the plastic bags, going to the supermarkets and waiting for people to come out and asking them, what do you think? Should we bring it back? Yeah, hell yeah.
Yep.
I was at the supermarket the other day. I forget. I still don't because my wife goes most of the time. But when she sends me, I forget that I have to bring the bags myself. I don't. I go and I'm online and I got all this shit with me.
I deal with this in Connecticut.
And then I'm screwed.
It's terrible. I hate it. I wish I could vote my plastic bags back in. But you have the opportunity to here in New Jersey.
We're gonna try. We're gonna flip it. I think we're gonna flip it. We're that close. Chitterelli almost. Do you have a favorite?
We're not endorsing anyone.
Staying out.
Yeah, no, we're so and we truly are committed to supporting whoever it is that wins out the primary. Good. We actually have primaries on our side, which is wonderful. We're so committed to supporting it, and everyone who's watching, I'm sure you have your preferences and have your preferences. Go vote in the primary. Be opinionated. But what I'm asking you, and what we're all asking you from Early Vote Action is, whoever wins out this primary, please come with us and get behind supporting that candidate and getting a Republican governor in November, because that is what matters. And I know people are going to be hurt after primaries, but put that away and think about the future of this state.
Get over it. Everybody's got to vote red because it's better than having Phil Murphy Jr. in there. And on his way out, he did us a real great service, by upping our utilities. Everybody out there, if you're watching this, you can't afford another blue state governor. Please listen to Paula. Whoever your candidate is, no matter if they win, lose, we got to all come together in the end, and we got to put a red state governor in and flip New Jersey red, please.
Absolutely.
Paula, thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, no,
this was some great conversation.
Thank you so much.
I just want to plug you again. It's Early Vote Action, one word, earlyvoteaction.com. And remember, scottloia.com. Very much. All right. Thanks, guys, for joining us. I'm your incorrigible host, Scott Loia, and we will see you on the next one. All right? Thank you, Paul. Okay, that was good.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Good.